I'd like to be a queen of people's hearts, in people's hearts. But I don't see myself being queen of this country. I don't think many people would want me to be queen. Actually, when I say many people, I mean the establishment that I'm married into, because they've decided that I'm a non-starter.
Princess Diana's tragic story. Why it matters, from fairy tale to nightmare, all within the span of just a few decades. Today I will explain how Britain, on that day they lost Princess Diana, was the day they lost themselves. To many, Diana was a symbolic light that represented the people. She was the hope, the turning point in a rigid system. She could have been that face of sympathy and slow redemption for the history of oppression. But a choice was made that day rather than seizing the moment. They chose to destroy the light, and Britain's last embers of humanity with it. They sacrificed her on the altar of institutionalized imperialism in order to embrace the dark, hierarchical purity of class, division, power, and prestige. Her story is immensely tragic, but also far too common in the stratosphere of power and control throughout history. And in many stories, there are those who have committed themselves to embrace the darkness of their ambition by any means necessary. So they must sacrifice something to achieve their ends, and that means purging their goodness, their humanity, their consciousness. They do this so that there will be no reminders of how grotesque they have become. Any hindrances must be rooted out in order to embrace limitless cruelty without regret. And this is where the tragedy of Princess Diana comes into play, because Diana was that consciousness, the light and reminder of goodness, fairness, a figure of enlightened hope. Whenever people called her the people's princess, it was a slap in their face, a thorn in their side of how unrelatable to the people they have become. Every time she would openly express emotional love for her children in public, it was treated as being uncivilized and unbecoming of one of her status. According to those who live in the higher upper echelons, of course, they believed in the tradition of British stiff upper lip. You know, that tradition that psychologists today recognize as a harmful practice of emotional suppression, where expressing natural motherly love openly was considered unsophisticated at that time, because once again it was a reminder to them that they were empty inside, treating their children like breeding transactional products, whose primary job was supposed to keep on a legacy, continue the bloodline, where love was optional and emotions were meant to be controlled and regulated. So when she demonstrated motherly affection for her boys, this again was something abhorrent to them. So in that environment and toxic sludge disguised as beauty and regalness, it's only natural that now they would view her in an adversarial way. She was something that threw the system out of whack, and it was too much for them, so they brought to bear all the vile and disgusting methods they could in order to corrupt and rot her from the inside. Her beauty, affection, and shyness will be eroded into something that could be broken and later thrown away. And Princess Diana felt the full brunt of it all, as she would later on testify to.
They see me as a threat of some kind, and I'm here to do good. I'm not a destructive person.
Why did I see you as a threat?
I think every strong woman in history has had to walk down a similar path, and I think it's the strength that causes the confusion and the fear.
Princess Diana provided detailed personal accounts of the intense emotional, mental, and institutional abuse she suffered during her marriage to Prince Charles. Most famously in her 1995 Panorama interview, she described a hostile environment where her mental health struggles were used to undermine her, and she felt actively targeted by the royal institution. Diana highlighted the psychological impact of Prince Charles's ongoing affair with Camilla Parker Bowles, stating in the Panorama interview that it made her feel worthless. Diana revealed that after suffering from postnatal depression and cries for help, the institution labeled her unstable and mentally unbalanced, using these labels to discredit her strength. Straight out of the playbook of darkness, this is how they treat her because she was an outlier. They had no problems using emotional bullying tactics, psychological manipulating tactics, and aristocratic pressurized emotional coercion in order to destroy what was good about her. She was that constant, annoying, empathetic reminder of how bad they were. But they wouldn't stop there. The cumulative effects of their relentless onslaughts, they weren't finished playing with their prey, because she admitted to profound desperation, including cutting herself, and in a deeply personal revelation, confirmed she threw herself down a staircase while 4 months pregnant with Prince William, in a desperate plea for attention and help from Charles. Diana spoke of the extreme isolation she felt, stating she was crying out for help, but was ignored by the royal family, who she claimed did not know how to handle her depression. These unspeakable cruelties shouldn't be surprising if you consider the source that is implementing it, the legacy of unbridled sadism and brutality, all hidden in the obvious illusionary veneer of a cartoonish version of decorum. The real irony in all of this is the autocracy system focused everything on emotional restraint for social image, but ends up eviscerating someone psychologically because of that very same emotions she invoked in them, like jealousy, envy, anger, sadness, and possessiveness, all because she was often referred to as the people's princess and the Queen of Hearts, as a symbol of compassion, kindness, and humanity. At 19, she may not have fully understood what royal life would involve.
But did you know what you were taking on in that kind of sense? Not being able to just walk down the street?
No, I didn't.
It was the strong, unrelenting royal and societal pressure that doomed her into entering the marriage with serious doubts and unresolved emotional complications. You can't make this stuff up. First, she is basically forced into this marriage by immense societal and royal pressure. Then, when she acquires too much attention beyond her station, she is then considered an aristocratic liability. I would love to say that this has a happy fairy tale-like ending, a fantasy where the princess goodness ends up changing the hearts of those around her, causing them to reflect on their evil ways, to see that there is a different path to travel, where the princess finds true love of a prince and rides off into the sunset living happily ever after. That would be nice, wouldn't it? It is truly a shame, because those are all the qualities of what she embodied. She was the fantasy princess who swayed the hearts of the masses. She was that fantasy princess that embodied a more realistic, hopeful outlook. She was that princess of fantasy, but she had the bad fortune of not being surrounded by 2 evil stepsisters, but a whole institution that embodies the stepsisters' mentality. So in conclusion, the Princess Diana story comes to an end, because in the early hours of 31st August 1997, Diana, Princess of Wales, died from injuries sustained in a car crash in a tunnel in Paris, France, trying to evade paparazzi. What a miserable way to conclude such a wonderful life. So in the end, the aristocratic institutions that hated her, harassed her, and campaigned for destroying her character in any way they could, they got their victory. But her passing wasn't something quiet in the night. It was a verdict, an undeniable watershed moment for the British monarchy. It changed not only public emotion in the short term, but the long-term relationship between the public, the media, and the royal family. This tragic moment exposed that the system is unempathetically rotten, with destructive traditionalist behaviors. Her passing was a sentence on a system, so when she died, to me, this was Britain's last chance to change its historical image of oppression, occupation, and colonialism. Now look at Britain as it fades into the darkness. With an aging population, record low birth rates, crumbling infrastructure, social and society unrest at record levels, energy price spikes, supply chain disruptions, and food price inflation, Britain's decline is all but certain. But here's something to think about, and I'll leave you with this thought. If they could psychologically butcher Princess Diana with emotional cruelty, a person that was part of their aristocratic society, if they could devour their very own in this manner without any real remorse, what do you think they would do to the people they call commoners? Just something to think about.